Let me make sure I record this for you guys in case you guys want to keep it. I'll send you guys a link after. I want to introduce you guys to Jennifer Barefoot Smith. She is a guidance counselor in the Boston Public Schools. She's more than a guidance counselor. You guys will see a lot of her in the future. She's who I consider it's probably the nicest thing I ever say about her, but she's like who I consider an expert in the field. She knows everything about college and career. If you have any questions, she is someone that will have an answer. And if she doesn't have one, she will find it out. She will find it. She's like a well-respected in what she does. She's helped turn a lot of students' lives around in terms of like supporting them with the college and career process. So tonight she's going to present on the college essay. She's been to over 100 countries. I keep bragging about that because I haven't. So if you have questions about that, feel free to ask them as well.
Not at all related. Corey just likes to say.
Yeah, I like to say she's been to a lot of countries. Go ahead.
And also I'm bilingual. So if you have questions in Spanish, I can help you, and I can pretend to help you in my passable, but not so great Portuguese and Italian, and Creole. So yeah. So good evening, everybody. I assume that you're all juniors, rising seniors, about to be seniors. So yay. I know that the college process and moving on, the transition from high school to college can be scary, and it is a lot of work, and it's a big decision, and it's a big thing that you have to do. So I want to help you think about one of the most important parts of it, the college essay, in a way that hopefully will help you to have less stress and to come up with a really good essay that will help you get into the schools that you're interested in. So, if you have any questions, like Corey said, just raise your hand or let me know. Again, my name is Jennifer Barefoot Smith. I am a guidance counselor in the Boston Public Schools, and I have a lot of experience with the college process. So for people in the junior and senior years, that's like what my specialty is. And yeah, so let's get into it. And of course, it's not going to click there. All right, so the college essay. Why is it important? The college essay is your biggest opportunity, and often your only opportunity, to share who you are and to share your voice with the admissions officers, the people who are going to decide if they're going to admit you to their school or not. When you're applying to school, most of your application is facts and information, right? What classes you took, what grades you got, what activities you're part of. It's just lists and pieces of paper. And so the essay is one of the things that can help bring you to life. Remember, they're sitting at a table reading through thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of applications with the same kind of information. It's a transcript, it's a this, it's a that grade, it's a this activity, it's a this sport, it's a that team, right? But what is going to make you stand out on top of the stuff that you do all day long at school and in your lives is going to be your voice. And if they don't meet you personally, right, because it's all done through an application, how are they going to hear that voice? How are they going to get to know who you are and what your personality is and what kind of, character you have? That can come from the college essay. So it's really important that you're sharing stuff about you, who you are, letting your voice come off the page with them so they get a feeling for who you are. Most schools don't have an interview option. Very few schools still offer an interview. So this is like the number one place where you get to show who you are in your words, in your way, not somebody else writing about you, not a recommendation, but what you want to show them about you. So the topic and what you say is really important, right? And I just keep that in mind. It's the piece of your application that can really show them who you are, and it can make the difference of them saying, oh, we want this person in our group for next year. That being said, they really want to get to know you. They want to know who you are. They want to know that person, what you're passionate about, and if you're a good fit for their community. Schools are looking to make a class out of the thousands of people who apply. Often they're all capable of doing the work. They're all meet the requirements of getting into the school. So how do they pick? They pick based on what kind of a group they want. Excuse me. And so they are looking to make it balanced. They don't want 1,000 valedictorians. They don't want 1,000 basketball team members. They want a valedictorian, a basketball person, somebody from the debate team, somebody who's quiet, somebody who's loud, somebody who plays music, somebody who likes doing community service. They want a real variety of people, and they want people that fit with whatever their school is like. And part of how they determine that is what they learn from you in your essay, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that's happening in the essay that I think people lose sight of a lot, but is really important, especially for the more competitive colleges and universities, they are using this piece of written information to judge your skills, how well you can write, how you come up with ideas, arguments, organization, and the attention to detail that you pay when you are writing. And that's because a lot of college is writing based, essays, lab reports, papers, tests, etc. So that means that they are looking to see, can you really handle the work at their school? They don't know just from reading your transcript, because an A at your school and an A somewhere else, and one history teacher might give 10 papers a year, another history teacher might never give a paper at all. And so how will they know if you can handle the school and what they give at their school? I've had an admissions officer tell me, when I asked about a student who had a really great transcript and also had a really great story, and stuff that was going on in that person's life and very compelling, but they didn't get into the school, and I wondered why. Excuse me. So I reached out and I asked, was there something more they could have done? What was missing? And the school said that we really weren't sure that the student could handle our school that is extremely rigorous in terms of writing, that particular school. And we had some concerns and we didn't want to set them up for failure. So we didn't accept them. And that's realistic. And it's also, I know it hurts, but it's also fair, right? They don't want you to come there if you can't handle it, and then you end up spending money to fail. So I respected their reasoning. It made sense, but they really are judging you and that ability to write and think and organize and process. And I think that really doesn't get mentioned enough. And so simple mistakes, and then more complex mistakes, they're all kind of reading into the person reading it, whether it's conscious or subconscious, those little things that when you read, they don't make sense and make you go, wait, what? That split second of the that's what you want to try to eliminate in the editing process. And I'll talk about that in a little while. Okay, so this essay can do a lot for you. It shows who you are. It talks to the admissions officers directly, and it also lets them decide if you fit and lets them see how really what those grades really mean, what kind of a student you really are, can you really write, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the one time you're doing this essay. So they expect it to be really well done, that you took some time to do it, right? Like it's not the same as your paper or your homework that you turn in every one time real quick each day. This is like a once in a lifetime thing, maybe twice if you do master's or a PhD. So, all right. A college essay should have certain things in it that you want it to do and that you want it to be, because you want it to do some work for you, right? It's helping you get into college. And so one of the things you really want a good college essay to have is strong images and strong language. That doesn't mean throwing a bunch of big words you don't understand, because that's really obvious, right? But you can go through your sentences and through your paragraphs and look for places to make it better, make it more interesting, make that language stronger. You definitely want it to be well written and have no errors, right? They know that you've had months to work on this. So if you really care and if you really want to go to their school, the biggest thing you can do to show that is to show that you spent the time to check it over again and again, to ask for some help, to really get it cleaned up and neat and perfect. So you shouldn't have any grammatical errors. You shouldn't have any spelling errors. You shouldn't have any typos, nothing that looks rushed or thrown together, because then you're not serious, right? And they'll see that and they'll know that, and they'll move on to someone else who is. You're not competing with your town or your school. You're not competing even with your state. You're competing with the whole country and the whole world. And somebody else out there is paying attention and does care enough to make those corrections. So I know this is hard because this is the procrastination, last minute rush generation, or more than, I'm a procrastinator too, but this is not something you leave to the last minute. And you being here now shows that you're not that kind of student, which is great, because you're trying to take the initiative to work on this from before. And the college essay really should start when you're a junior, because you really need to start thinking about it and taking the time to develop it and to edit it and to polish it. Your essay should tell a story about you. I cannot emphasize this enough.
I think someone had a question.
Go ahead. What is it? Alejandra? You can unmute yourself, I believe. No? Okay. Well, someone else had a question that they sent to me directly.
She can unmute now. She can unmute now.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. So what you were talking about no errors and things about the essay, like what happened when you're like just learning English, like what happened with that? Because I don't know if you know that, because when you're like immigrant and all that, and you've been here like for a couple of years, and you don't know like the perfect words or like the right words to describe or to, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. So one thing is like word choice and a variety of words, which you can get help for your ideas and for more words. And the other thing is like just errors in grammar, spelling and mistakes. That's why you have someone look it over. And that person can tell you like, first of all, Google Docs and Word is going to underline all the stuff. I've had students show up to me with papers that are all underlined in red. Why haven't you fixed that? Why are you coming to me with stuff you haven't even reread, right? So don't turn in an essay that you didn't read out loud to yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of people do that. They don't take the time to look over it, even one time. A good college essay, you're going to spend hours working on and editing and fixing and questioning and working on. If you're serious and that's what you're trying to apply to a really competitive school. That's how somebody gets an essay good. Even a native English speaker is not going to write it perfectly the first time. You're going to find mistakes the more you think about it, the more you look at it, the more you reread it, the more other people look at it and read it for you. So don't be afraid to ask for help, to use tools that are out there. Get like a subscription if you don't have someone that can help you, for the what is it called, Grammarly, I'm sure they have like a the free one for the trial for like 7 days, which can help find some of the grammatical errors and the spelling errors and stuff like that. But there are tools out there, and you should look for those. Now, if you don't have the right way to explain something, find someone that speaks both languages and tell them, express to them in your native language what you're trying to say, and let them help you figure out how to say it in the best way in English. And if you want more variety of words, excuse me, you can also look up on dictionary.com. You can change it to something called a thesaurus. And the thesaurus is a thing that finds words that mean the same thing. as the one you're looking for, so that you can have more variety and not say the same word over and over and over again. Again, native speakers use this all the time. Good writers, authors use this all the time. A thesaurus was my best friend in high school and college because I wanted my essays to be good. And I wanted to, sometimes you can't think of that word. It doesn't come to you. And you ask your mom or your roommate or whoever, and it still doesn't come to you. And then you go to the thesaurus and you look it up and you go, oh, that's the word I was trying to think of. And you find it in that little section of things that mean the same thing. And sometimes you don't. And so you kind of pick another word and try to figure out what are some similar words to that word. But try all of your resources first to see if you can find those things. Now, I had a student who was not a native English speaker who came here when they were maybe a sophomore or junior in high school. And they started off on baby book level, elementary school level books in English, and they worked their way up. And they were one of the top students. Was their English perfect? No. Did they have an accent? Of course. Did they make some mistakes? Yes. And they made certain mistakes over and over again because they have to do with the way your brain processes and learns new languages. But they asked for help. They actually wrote their essay about having struggles with English. And it was an excellent essay. And someone reading it on top of it being an excellent essay is going to read it and it's in perfect English and say, wow, well, you did a really good job because this is really well written for someone who's talking about how hard it was and not understanding the language just 2 years ago, right? So that showed also how smart the young lady was and how hardworking she was and how much she she didn't give up. She persisted. She made sure that she did what she needed to do for herself. And, that student has since graduated college, done a master's degree, is working, right? So that's not something that should hold you back. Okay. Just ask more and more people for help, because you can write a good essay, even if English is not your first language. And they know that when you get to college, what you write isn't going to be as perfect as the college essay that you've been working on for 3 months, right? So they also know that even though you did your best job on this and you've got lots of help to make sure the English is perfect, when you get to college and you're writing an essay in your dorm room, the day before or the week before, you're going to have some mistakes that you might have got help with on a 1-page paper that might show up more on a 5 or a 10-page paper in college. But they'll have writing centers in college that can help you where you can work on that too. And that whole process in general will help your English get stronger. Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for clarifying that.
You're welcome. Someone else asked me a question about the who you're being judged in terms of the variety colleges want to see, and they asked if it means that you're competing against people that are similar to you. So in a way, yes, that's one way to look at it. You definitely are competing against people who are similar to you, right? But no one's exactly the same as someone else. So you're also just competing in general against the whole group of people. And sometimes, if you're applying to a place that's really different from where you are right now, like in another state or maybe in a state that people from our state don't tend to apply to, that in of itself could just be the thing that makes you different, right? Even if all the other stuff you have is similar to people from the other state. So there's no real way to know what who's applied to the school and who you're competing against, but just know that it's not just like the other kids in your school. And whatever it is that you do that you're passionate about or that you feel makes you unique, not to take away your uniqueness, but I once saw a video from a college admissions officer who said, sometimes kids get so wrapped up trying to have the most perfect, unique essay that we've never, ever heard before. And the answer is, we've heard it. We've read a million essays. We've heard it. We've literally heard it all. So don't worry about making it something no one's ever heard of before, and just show us who you are. And I remember having students that I had a student one year who really could not start to write her essay because she was so wrapped up on this. It has to be different. It has to be perfect. It has to be something no one's ever heard of. And this topic isn't good enough and this topic isn't good enough. Just stop. Like, you are good enough. So whatever your story is good enough. Right. And it's okay if they've heard your story before. There's been other people who didn't do well and then started doing better and got it together. There have been people who are top straight A students their whole life and participate in a bunch of activities and are passionate about debate. There are people who are the captain of the sports team. They've read all of those essays before, but what they haven't read is your essay about that experience. So it's okay if the topic is similar, because the way you write it and who you are is different. Does that make sense? And that's what they're trying to find out. Who are you?
That makes sense.
Okay. So I wasn't saying it to try to make you feel pressure that you're competing with other people. It was more to make you realize, just be you, because it's okay that you're competing with other people, but you want to make sure you're doing a good job at what you're putting forth because you're competing with other people, but not to make that be like you have to stand out from them in a special way. No, you're going to stand out because whoever you are and whatever your voice is unique. And you're not going to get into every school. Most kids don't get into every school, even the kids who get into almost every school, right? And that's okay. And sometimes kids get into, I had a student get into Harvard and Brown who didn't get into a school that was not as highly ranked as Harvard and Brown. There's no like rhyme or reason that the other school didn't take him. Maybe they even took him because they knew he'd get into one of those other schools and they'd rather give the spot to somebody else. So you can't like know why a school is going to do what they're going to do. And they don't even know until they get the whole list of kids in front of them and then start making decisions. So you just have to work really hard to make an essay that you're proud of, that's about you, that really tells a story about you. So that actually was the point I was on, right, before the questions. And so you want to make sure that you're showcasing yourself. I've had students write essays about their grandmother, who they loved and who raised them and was a big part of their life. That's great, but they never got back to themselves. That's not great, right? It's okay if you open with that, but somehow it has to be brought back to you. So even if the topic you choose or part of it is about something or someone else, it always has to return to you. And because the admissions officers are not letting grandma in to come to their college, they're letting you in. I had a student, like the salutatorian of the school, he showed me his essay, and it was about photo remediation as a method to solve global warming. Nothing about him, not one sentence about himself personally. It was literally an essay on how to fix a social issue, right? And I said, well, why would a school what is this? Do you want to be a biologist? Do you want to be like an environmental engineer? No. Then why did you write this, right? Like, is this something you're really into? No. So where did this come from? Oh, well, the prompt said to pick a topic that was important in the world and write about it. Like, sure, I guess, but no school wants to hear that. That has nothing to do with you. And I sent him home. He, wanted to get into this college really badly, and he wanted to do what's right. He just thought he'd done the right thing. He didn't know. He didn't know, and no one told him, right? So he went back home, he thought about it, and he wrote an essay about himself. Completely different essay, a whole new essay. And of course, it needed a lot of editing. So this was close to when he had to apply. So we spent several afternoons working really hard on fixing the new one he wrote, because he'd never edited it. He'd never proofread it. He had to change things around. So it was quite stressful because it was at the last minute, which is why I'd rather you think about these things now instead of later. But he ended up with a really great essay that was about him and his family, and what he loved about being in the AP classes that he was in high school, and what he was looking forward to in college. And it was like really about him. I could see and feel him. Whereas the first essay about global warming, it just felt like an essay for class, and I couldn't see if I liked the person or if the student was someone I'd want to have on my campus, right? So you have to have that like human connection should be there. And the new essay was great, and it really did show who he was, and he got into Tufts University, and he's a senior this year, right? Like, and he's really happy. That was his first choice school and where he wanted to go, and that was his dream school. Now he was a great student. Would he have gotten in with the essay on global warming? I have no way of knowing. He has no way of knowing, but I don't think it would have been, I don't think so. It would have been very odd if he, like, I've never seen a student write an essay like that and it work, if that makes sense. So, because it doesn't help them see who you are, right? He had really great recs, so maybe the strong recommendations from people would have helped show who he was, but they really want to see that in your essay and get to know you from your perspective, not from someone else's. So while doing that, though, you don't want to just give a list of like, hi, I'm Jennifer, and this is who I am and why I should come to your school. That doesn't show any nuance or show that you can write well. And it's also like, would be kind of like, oh, a list. Thank you. So what you want to do, and there's this little expression that we use, but sometimes people don't understand what we mean by it, but I'm going to show you some examples later. You want to show them without telling them. You don't want to be like, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this. You want to show them through your writing some things about you that also let you know you'll be able to succeed in college without quite saying it, right? And show them who you are, what you're passionate about, and why they want you there. If I haven't said it enough, you is like the really big point of this essay, okay? It's got to be about you. All right. What should it do? Somehow throughout the essay, and I will show you how, it should convey, meaning let them get some important ideas about you. And they're seeing your whole application, right? So it should kind of fit. And also, you know what your recommenders are going to say about you, even if you don't read the recommendations. So, you know, what are these important things about who you are as a person? It should highlight your voice and your personality. So I've had kids that are really funny people, and it's come across in the essay. I've had kids who are shy, but that's also come across in the essay. In fact, the essay was a little bit about that. I've had kids who are really into a particular subject or a career, and that's really important to them, and that's come across in the essay. And that's okay, because that's who they are, right? It should highlight anything major or important in your life, or something else that the application can't show them, right? This is also an additional time to kind of like give them more information. So they get your grades, they get your sports, your activities, your volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. Is there something that's not in that's important to you, that you could highlight in the essay that might show them another little slice of who you are? I'll give you an example. I had a student who was a huge soccer fan. I mean, fanatic, psycho. Like, all he wanted to do was play soccer. He actually organized a soccer team of the teachers, because none of the kids wanted to play. He got the teachers, because there were a lot of teachers from different backgrounds from other countries that like soccer. He got the teachers together, made a teachers league, and then played on the team with the teachers every week, because he loves soccer and he just wants to do soccer all the time. So he wrote an essay about soccer. Unfortunately, the essay was literally about soccer, like how a game looks and sounds, right? So it was like he talked about the grass and the sounds of the whistle, and he kind of missed the mark on the whole, like, use images. He did use lots of images. They were just about the soccer field and the game. And it was just like listening to someone tell me about an actual soccer match. It didn't tell me about him. It was like play by play of what you see when you're there. And, you know, if I was someone that needed to learn what soccer was, and that would be a very vivid description of soccer, great. But I'm pretty sure every college admissions officer in the country has a basic idea of what soccer is and isn't too interested in hearing about how the bleachers look and the grass looks and the referee looks, right? And so in trying to help him fix it and trying to be like, what else could you add? And what about you? And he's like, well, this is me. I love soccer. And I'm like, I know. But what else could you tell us about you? Because this is a kid who was like the most polite, friendly, sweet, respectful, charming young man, like very kind to everybody, like really nice person. There was so much more to him than just soccer, right? Great student, had like some nonprofit organization he'd started, all kinds of stuff, very humble, which is I think why he didn't even notice or think of these other things. But in talking to him, and I knew him and I knew his background a little bit and that he'd come from another country, but I didn't know when. And I didn't know how long he'd been in the US, as he amazingly has literally no accent. And I don't know how he learned English so quickly. And so, but I had thought he'd been in the country for a long, long time, since he was a little kid. And in our conversation, he mentions, well, when I came after the earthquake, and I'm like, wait, and this was several years ago. So in the time frame of the earthquake, he's from Haiti. I was like, that was only a couple of years ago. When did you come to the US? How did you get here? So I started asking him about his story of coming, and he told me, and he's, came to Florida first and was living in like a shelter for refugees from the earthquake. And then eventually came to Boston, where there were family members and others, and his family got established here. And I said, oh, wow, I never knew that about you. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah. And I was like, okay, so how did you learn English? And and he's like, well, when my mom had cancer, I like just really spent a lot of time reading. And I was like, when your mom had cancer, what? When did this happen? Oh, all of like sophomore and junior year. And I said, no one in the school knew. He came to school every day with a smile on his face, did work every day, had straight A's. We had no idea. And as I'm sitting there looking at him like shocked, like, oh my God, is she okay? What's going on? He goes, oh, Jen, I could have written about this. I'm like, I mean, if you want to, but it's certainly any one of these things would have told me something about you way more than how green the soccer field grass is, right? And so part of that conversation led to something I'm going to show you in a little while, is that how could we help kids think about the things that have happened in their life that they somehow might have forgotten or not realize could be something they could talk about, right? And in the end, he changed around his essay. It was still about soccer, but it also was about his family and his religion and how that helped him get through some difficult times, and that, soccer was part of that. And so it made more sense in the end. And it was really about him and not just like describing a soccer game, which was not the greatest essay ever. And so kind of figuring out all the things that you might possibly have to talk about is really the first step, and often a really hard step that kids don't know how to do. And you're going to need some help from that. And I have like a little thing to help you with that. And so just like those things that people forget about or don't realize they could talk about, or don't realize how they have something to do with their evolution and their development as a person, right? And so that is one other thing to do. And then the essay should also complement the rest of your application. So if you're, the president of the senior class, or, you spend a lot of time taking AP classes, or you're really into volunteering, you don't have to necessarily make your essay about it, but maybe it'll get touched on, or maybe one of those 4 or 5 things you do will get touched on in the application and sort of bring it kind of, you want it, the essay to me is like the little thing that puts the bow in the package and brings it all together and makes it like, here, this is this awesomeness that is me, right? And so that's sort of like the conceptual stuff. So I'm going to jump over the other side of this slide of what the essay should not do. And I sort of gave you some examples with the other, these anecdotes of students, but it should not be about a current event topic. Even if it says pick a current event, do not do that. I don't let my students even read the prompts on the Common App, because they get too bogged down in this other stuff that ends up resulting in an essay that doesn't teach us about you. And that's not good. Please don't write about something that's unrelated to you or your future goals, interests, like the student writing about global warming and didn't want to do anything with environmental science. That makes no sense. Now, if he wanted to do something with environmental science as a major, I could see that being an essay that could work. But for someone who wanted to go into medicine, it had no connection, right? It also shouldn't try to tell your whole life story. I have had 5 to 10 page papers where I'm like, oh, wow, okay, this is a lot, where it's literally like, and then I went to my aunt's house, and then this happened, and then we went here, and then we went there. That's too much. Okay, you're picking something that you can use as a vehicle to talk about you, some story, some topic, but not a line by line of my whole life. It's not possible to tell your whole life in 1 or 2 pages, nor should you try, nor do they want to hear that. It also shouldn't be a list, then this, then this, then that, then this, then this. That sounds like you're in 1st grade, right? And then I went to the store, and then I bought an ice cream, and then my mother took me to the playground, and then we went home, and then I fell asleep. You guys are seniors going to college, so that was a great paper when you were 5. It's not a great paper now, right? You shouldn't be boastful. Like, it's good to be proud of yourself, but not like in a cocky way, right? In an arrogant way. You don't want to come off in that way. And so you can make sure that doesn't happen if you are checking your vocabulary, your tone, and that's where going back and revising happens. Now, some people I had one student do a really risky essay. She was a very funny, sarcastic person. Everybody, I'm sure, I think Corey even, I'm pretty sure Corey and Hayes told her, no, you cannot write about that. And she did anyway, but she did a really good job and it worked. But you have to be, really good at writing so that worked. Otherwise it could come off very differently. And I think I have that one in here to show you guys. So the other thing, you should not complain about the school or the teachers, even if it's true. So you saying, well, I would have done better, but these people didn't give me this, this, and this. And well, this school doesn't have any resources. And that may all be true, but that is not showing them who you are and how you deal with things and who you're going to be at their school, except that you're going to come to their school and complain, right? And so that's not going to make you look good. Please don't go in that direction. If there's things that you want to account for that aren't great and they are about the school, there's a way to shift that. It could be that you just talk about like coming from a place that doesn't have the same kind of resources other places and how that's a struggle or difficult, but there's a way to do it with a tone that's not cynical or negative. And then move on to you, right? Like that's the problem now. What have you done? Who are you? How do you move forward? So that's some other stuff you shouldn't do. Now, what the last couple things you should do, and kind of connected to this complaining about, and if there's problems you need to explain, right? If and only if, I promise you, if is the hardest word in the English language. So those of you learning English, if is a really hard word. It's a little word, but it's a really hard word because a lot of people don't pay attention to it or read it or understand it. It does not mean do this. It means think about what I'm saying and only apply it if it is for you, right? It's a conditional word that actually requires some critical thinking. If and only if there is something that needs explaining about your grades or your time, you could do that in your essay. Most people should not and do not need to do this. However, if you are a student who had something happen, I had a student break their leg their sophomore year and couldn't come to school for 3 months and it affected their grades. I've had students who went through some kind of a trauma and that affected something. If that is the case for you and it makes sense and you're comfortable with explaining it and it would explain why you're doing better now, and you feel you need to do that for the school you're applying for, with consulting Corey or your counselor, you could write that type of essay. And some students, I will say to them, you need to write that kind of essay because you need to explain why you failed all of freshman and sophomore year. And if you don't know, you better figure out why and come up with a reason and write about that, right? Because why should they let you in if you've not done what you need to do and you're trying to go to school? They need to see that you can do school. But that's not for everybody. A straight A student does not need to write an essay like that. An A and B student, an A, B, and C student does not need to write an essay like that. It is very rare that someone needs to write an essay like that. So again, if and only if that pertains to you, you can explain it. But again, you have to have a positive from it. So it needs to like, this is what happened and now this is what I did that changed it. If you're still not doing that, i.e. you're still getting bad grades as you've done for the last 3 years, then this is not the essay for you because you haven't showed a change, right? If there's a change that you can prove that is shown by your recommendations and your transcripts and everything else, that's different. But only if, big word, if. Okay. And then the last thing is show that you care enough to revise, edit, check, and revise, edit, and check again and again and again. If you really want to go to top school XYZ, then you really want to spend hours and hours on your essay. If you don't want to spend hours and hours on your essay, I'm sorry, the reality is you don't want to go to that school. Not to be mean, but there are 1,000 other kids who do, and they're taking the time to revise and check it. It's the same if I'm going to go look for a job somewhere and I don't update my resume and I don't read over my resume and check for every little detail and every spelling error and typo, then I don't want the job. I'm not serious, right? So they know that, and they can see when someone's being sloppy and rushed. And that's the quickest way to get put in the other pile is they see that you just didn't care about what you wrote, right? And that's where they're like, okay, this person they're not serious. And they put you to the side. So don't do that to yourself, because you deserve to have every consideration and have everybody look at you and learn who you are. Okay. All right. Now, this is what I was talking about. How do you figure out where to start? So, like I said, I don't let my students look at the Common App prompts. I don't even know what they are. I'm not looking at them. I don't know if they changed this year, if they changed last year, because I don't care. Because guess what? There's always one on there that says, or a topic of your choice. So if you can't find, when you're done writing your essay, you can go back and look at the prompts and see if your essay fits one of those prompts. Great. If it doesn't, then you click the one that says an essay topic of your choice and you're done. Very simple. But reading the Common App prompts gets you into things where kids write essays about global warming and photo remediation. I don't think he even knew what photo remediation was. I didn't. I had to Google it. And by the time I was done Googling it, I think I knew more than he did. It's like, you can't write an essay about this if it's not your passion and you know more than the person who can Google, right? So instead, you should reflect on things in your life, in your past, and in your personality that you think tell a good story about yourself and who you are as a person, who you are as a student, what you've been through, what have you. So what I have students do, what we came up with, and an English teacher at my school helped come up with some of these, is we have kids do an iceberg and a timeline activity. The iceberg one is just to kind of get people thinking. And you guys can think about this as I'm talking, of the stuff that, you may forget makes you who you are, or that other people may not know makes you who you are, right? You are meeting me on a Zoom. You don't know anything about me. You're going to make a couple of assumptions from, whatever's in the background, my voice, my clothing, et cetera, but you're not going to know much. And the introduction, what my job is, right? But you're not going to know much else. But there's probably a lot more to me than the stuff that, you can see and that you were told in the introduction. And the same goes for you guys. So I want you to start thinking about what's all that other stuff that maybe people don't know right off the bat. So let me stop sharing for a second and share the other one. All right, so an iceberg, you may or may not have heard of an iceberg before, but an iceberg is the big chunk of ice that floats in the colder northern regions of the world by the Arctic, by the North Pole and the South Pole. And it's what you can see on top of the water is a big chunk of ice, but only about 1/3 or less of the iceberg, the total iceberg, is above the water. The rest of it's under the water. And so this visual shows you that, right? So, and if you guys ever saw the Titanic movie, the thing that sunk the Titanic, they put a little ship here, was an iceberg, because they saw this part on the horizon, but they didn't know how much was underneath. And, you know, they thought they were further away from this part that they could crash with, but underneath they were closer, and they hit this part and it sunk the ship. But the idea is that there's a lot more underneath an iceberg than you can tell. So the things that are visible usually are, you know, our dress, our behavior, sometimes what food we eat, what language we speak, our religion, etiquette, the way we, you know, our greetings and mannerisms. Those are the visible things. But the stuff that's invisible, the stuff that's under the surface, is like our customs, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, and even like what we assume about other people, how we feel about things, how we react, our way of dealing with stuff. All of those things are under the surface. So in the iceberg activity, what I ask students to do is to take a blank, you know, you can just draw an iceberg and a water. And what are the things that people see and know about you, right? Or think about you? And then underneath, what are the things that people don't really know? And those are like your inner needs, your wants, your hopes, fears, interests. It can be your memories, things that shaped you in the past, your heroes, your regrets can be something that makes you who you are, what you're proud of, right? And so the more stuff you can put, the more meaningful and like real and reflective the qualities are, the better you're going to have, like the more stuff you're going to have to reflect on, the better kind of ideas you're going to pull out. So that's where I have kids kind of start as a warm up, right? Is with this iceberg thing. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions about the iceberg idea? Okay. And then the next thing that I ask students to do is go to the slideshow. Technology is the devil. There we go. Okay, and so once you do that, then I ask you to make a timeline. Okay, and it's just a simple, time machine, I guess you could call it, right? And it's just a piece of paper that you tape together in a row with a line in the middle. You can draw your own, right? But at 0 is now, and then you're going to go backwards and you want to go forwards. So I think about 5 or 7, 10 moments, events, things in your life that shaped you, stories from childhood or from, you know, even last year, whatever, and write those down. And then above the timeline, describe what happened. Like, you know, my grandma died. Below the timeline, how that transformed and evolved you, right? Not, I was sad. That's what you felt from it, right? But how did that change you? If it didn't, and it was just an event that happened that didn't shape you, that's different. Then maybe it doesn't belong on the timeline. But if it did change something about you and you noticed that it evolved you or transformed you or made you grow up or made you think differently, that's what you write below the timeline, right? And then from the 0 on, you can come up with, you know, same thing, 5, 7, 10 things. What are your dreams, goals, plans for the future? Your interests, right? They can be what you want to do as a job. They can be what you want to do in college. They can be what you want to do personally in your life, hobbies, relationships, spiritual, professional, etc., and put those on there. Now, once you have both of those, do you look and see, is there anywhere that they kind of connect? Is there anything from your experiences that shaped you that have something to do with your goals for the future? Is this thing that happened the reason you want to do this? Is this other thing that happened the reason that you are excited about this? And try to see if you see something that comes together, right? And you can draw on it and all that other stuff. What I think is helpful about this is the second part, is who I ask kids to look at it with. So what we found was that students often couldn't come up with a good topic. And maybe sometimes as the seniors, teachers that are just meeting them, we didn't know them well enough to help them figure out what their essay should be about. But then they'd go back and talk to their 10th grade or their 11th grade teacher or their advisor or their homeroom teacher or somebody that they'd gone through stuff with or their coach. And the person would say, well, remember when you did this and then you were that? Like, that's what you should write about. And the kid's like, oh, yeah. Right. And so there would be times where I'd be like, no, go talk to Miss Such and Such. She's going to help you figure out your essay. And they'd be like, her? Really? Yep. I promise you, go talk to her for 10 minutes. And they'd come back. They'd be like, Miss, you're right. Yo, she knew what I was supposed to write about. Yep. Because she knows you. And that's the important thing. People that know you can help you figure this out. And so part of being a good counselor for me is to be able to say, I'm not the best person right now because I just met you in September, right? Like, let's say I just met a kid in September. I don't know as much about them as somebody who went a whole year with them as a teacher, or even maybe somebody that taught them for 2 years in a row or had them when they were freshmen and now see them and how they're different as a senior. So go back and talk to those people or whoever you're close with in your family or friends and see how they can help you figure out those things in the past and reflect on them. And I think it's important to get somebody from school and somebody from not school, because often they come up with different things. And then you can compare like which one really resonates with you and is the one that you want to talk about for your college essay. Because everybody could write 10 great essays, 100 great essays about all the different things that have happened in their lives, right? You just have to find one that you want to be the one that's going to be your touchstone that says to colleges, this is my story that I'm going to use to talk about who I am and who I'm going to be in your campus. And that's going to be, you know, different for every person, but you just find that moment that's going to be your way in to start a story. Does that make sense? Do you guys have questions about that? And I'll just show you, like, it's literally just lines, past, present. So that would be the 0, right? This would be the 0 where the present and the past come together. And then you go to the future, right? And so once you're done, we would just have them take this to the teacher and say, here's my time machine. Here's what I thought of. Here's all the events that I figured out and reflected on. Here's my goals that I know I want to do. And then you say to the teacher, here, can you look at this with me, or the person at school? What do you think is unique or important about me? Right? And then they may pick something out of that group of things that you've put to say, this is the one that's really, like, I think really speaks to who you are. Or they may even say, hey, you got all this stuff, but you forgot this thing, right? So I feel like if that kid who wrote the soccer art essay had done this, we didn't do this activity back then. If he had done this activity, he probably would have come up with all these other things that he literally forgot about, until he was sitting there with me the day before he wanted to send his essay out saying, oh man, I could have written about this. Well, yes, sir, you could have, but he hadn't reflected in the right way to think of that. He just looked at the prompts. And so that's when, after that conversation, I was like, we can't do this again. There's no way a kid could forget his mom had cancer, right? Like, how did you forget that? You didn't forget it. You just, for whatever reason, read these prompts and got carried away in the wrong direction. And so I realized we needed to give them more direction that before they got to senior year. And so I worked with the junior teachers to make sure that they started doing that in a better way. And that this time machine is what we came up with. And so talk to those teachers about what they think is important and unique. And then based on what that adult knows about you, what do they think a college admissions officer would want to learn about me and or my life, right? And we had them do it as an assignment and bring it back to us. So the teacher had to sign it to prove they really did it. And then the exact same thing with a family member or a friend who knows you very well. Same 2 questions. What do you think is unique or important about me? Here's my list. Here's what I came up with. Maybe they'll come up with something else. Maybe they'll pick out one from there that they think is important. What do you think a college admissions officer would want to learn about me and or my life based on what you already know about me? And then bring all that back so that you can reflect and that, I think that helps a lot of people narrow down what little moment they want to pinpoint. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? Do you think that could help you guys? Looking at the black squares.
Yeah.
It's okay. I get it. I see somebody said yes in the chat. Thank you. And all right, so now let me close that one. All right, let's go back to this. So, no. How do I make it present? Let's stop share and share again. 1 second. There it goes. All right, so once you come up with a topic that's really about you that you think will be able to be your jumping off point for telling a story about you, okay? Choose the best one and write a draft. Just get your ideas out. It can be reorganized and polished afterwards. I tell kids, just write. It's okay, even if it's 4 pages, even if it's ugly, even if the grammar and the English and everything else isn't good. Just get your ideas down, and then we come back to it. Just get started. And then if you're still stuck and none of this helps, here's another thing you could do to help get some ideas. These are like some college essay seeds, some starters. They're sort of similar to what I've been saying, but here's one idea: an opportunity that you experienced as a kid, what it meant to you, how it has influenced the way you live your life. A challenge you experienced it as a kid, what it meant to you, how it has influenced the way you live your life. You see the pattern here, right? A secret you shared or never shared, its impact and how it has influenced the way you live your life. To an extent, we don't need to know your deepest, darkest secrets, right? Unless they are relevant to going to college or something important. I've definitely had some people overshare. A time someone committed an injustice against you, what happened, why it matters to you, how it's influenced the way you live your life. Again, if you're someone who fights for social justice or is doing something that has to do with this injustice, that's going to add to your essay. It's going to help like bring your application together. A failure or success in your life that mattered, tell that story, reflect on its impact on you. How's it influenced the way you live your life? Something you lost, physical or emotional, how you lost it, why it matters. How has it influenced the way you live your life? See the pattern? A tradition in your family described in vivid detail, what you do, what it's like, why it matters, how's it influenced the way you live your life. Again, don't pick one of these just because. Pick one that means something to you, right? Like it has to be really important to you. I think that the timeline does a better job of that than these kind of idea starters, but some people need, everybody's different. We're all different learners. So some people need this more than something else. These are some ideas. They are not the only ideas, right? So that's one way to think about it. Okay. So I don't know why I can't get it to present fully once I go out of the link. One thing that's really important to note is that this is not a normal school essay. It is not a 5-paragraph essay. It's not a school report. Sorry, I'm going to turn the light on in my house because this is like that kid who wrote the global warming essay. It should not be a global warming essay. It should not be a end world hunger essay. It should not be a, the war in Russia and Ukraine. It should not be the Afghanistan war. Like, those don't make any sense unless you were there or your family or you were affected, right? We don't need a current event report unless you want to be a journalist for CNN. That doesn't make sense. It's not a introduction, main body paragraph, main body paragraph, main body paragraph, conclusion. It's none of those things. The college essay is a very unique, special genre. It's its own genre. And that's hard because you don't write these every day. And you don't write like this probably ever, unless you're a creative writer that you just do this for fun. Schools don't really kind of teach this kind of thing. So, and you also don't read them. So you don't have a lot of experience of what a good one sounds like, because it's not like a book or an essay that you read regularly in school. So that's okay. I'm going to give you some examples. A good college essay needs a strong opening, whether that's because there's some kind of a hook or an anecdote or something that pulls the reader in or strong imagery, but you really want that first couple sentences to get the person to say, oh, I'm awake now. Yep, I'm reading this essay. I want to keep reading this essay. When your essay's at the admissions officer's table, I know this is going to sound horrible, but the reality is they're probably not spending longer than 1 to 1.5 minutes reading your essay. That's it. They've got to move on. So if they're not like in it from the beginning, and sometimes they don't even read the whole essay. Admissions officers will tell you that. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, that was enough. I don't need any more. So you want to find some way to really get them to want to read the essay and to get through to the end and spend that 1.5 minutes with you, to want you to come to their school. It usually has an introduction with that hook and that imagery and maybe the story. And then the bigger body paragraph kind of, or 2, depending on your essay, tells the story, gets into the topic, right? And starts showing the admissions officers who you are. And then there's a last paragraph that's usually shorter that kind of wraps everything up. It makes sure if there's themes throughout the essay, it ties them together, it brings them back. If there's imagery, it continues that thread throughout. It's kind of like a little string that you're like, oh, I see it there. I see it there. It's popping up here. It's popping up here. And at the end, it's like, whoop, bow, all great, right? And you want to, even if you had a topic that was kind of difficult or painful or sad or whatever, not super positive, right? You want to end on a strong, positive, hopeful note. Because everybody, people at an admissions table do want to see that, okay, you've gotten through whatever. And sometimes I have students who are like, I'm really not over this yet. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. Like that's reality. How can you say that tactfully, right? Like the news, put a spin on it. And I feel like you're the generation that's really good at this because you all live on Instagram and Snapchat, putting up your fake happiness all day long. So just do it in the conclusion, right? Find a way to make some kind of a strong ending, a hopeful note, or this is what I've learned from this. And now I'm this, and now I'm able to do that. Or even though it's still difficult, I keep moving forward with something, right? You want to end on like a higher note. Like if you guys have ever watched Winnie the Pooh, I know that's a really old cartoon, but the donkey, I think he's a donkey, Eeyore, he's always like, yeah, nothing's ever good, right? Even, I guess, You don't want to, even if the story is kind of Eeyore-ish, you don't want to end like that. You want to end like, okay, but here's what we're going to do going forward. Also, if there's a literary device or theme being used throughout the essay, it needs to tie it up at the end. If you're doing that, which is great, and you're able to do that, don't forget it and bring it back at the end. Okay, make sure that it's there. So strong imagery, some kind of a hook at the beginning, get them involved, tell your story, make sure it's about you, bring it all back together at the end. If you have found a way to make kind of some kind of thing go through it, then make sure that happens at the end. Don't leave it flat. Don't let it, like, bring it back. Don't forget about it. Okay. Questions? Okay. So once you have written your thing, you came up with, you reflected on, you found a topic and you wrote something. The first edit, to me, in my mind, is always the one where you just clean things up. That's where you fix grammar, spelling, make things make sense. If I read a sentence and I don't know who they is, who are you talking about? Was it your grandmother, your uncle, the dog, the birds outside? What's going on, right? If it's confusing, if the person reading it can't figure it out, because a lot of times we know the story in our own head, right? And so then to try to tell somebody else, we leave out details that we think aren't necessary, but actually are, because the other person without those details doesn't know what the heck happened. And even if it's only like a little piece that they don't know, but they're confused, that means the person at the admissions table who doesn't know you is even more confused. They're reading it like, wait, who? So you don't want that. You don't want people at the admissions table to have those, that little click in the brain of like, wait, what? Even if it's because they were confused, is going to make it seem like you didn't write it well. And the reality is maybe you didn't, if that little click happens, right? So you want to make sure there's no little psychological subconscious clicks, is what I always tell my students. Like, that's making me click. I want to get rid of that little thing that's stopping me. I want to be able to read the essay through smoothly and it makes sense. So the first thing you do is you fix all that stuff that's underlined in red. You fix all the grammar. If English isn't your first language, or if you're not strong in writing in English, even if it is your first language, a lot of people don't read and write well. Get some help. Look on Google Docs, but also Grammarly is one place to start. Your English teacher, someone else that you know in school who's a good writer, have them help you go through it. The next thing that a lot of kids don't know, even adults don't know, there should be no contractions. A contraction is a he will, you put the apostrophe and say he'll. I will, put the apostrophe, I'll. Don't, do not, with the apostrophe. You should not have any apostrophes in your college essay, or really any essay you write on a college level, unless it is because it's like, my family, the dog's thing, that's apostrophe because it's possessive. There should be no contractions, no two words put together with an apostrophe. Each word needs to be written out fully. That's just a general rule of professional writing, that contractions are not allowed. And for the most part, my students tell me I'm the first time they've ever heard that. So I'm sure it's also similar for you guys, that many of you probably have never heard this before. And that makes it really hard to stop doing, because we all write with contractions. And I do it too. When I help kids edit essays and I'm like, they're telling me and I'm typing something, or oops, I don't know what I hit. Or, I'm fixing a sentence because the grammar is wrong and I'm retyping it. I'll type the don't or the won't. And then I have to be like, go back, take it out. Because that's how we on a regular basis write and speak every day. It's just not okay in professional writing. So we have to not do it. It also adds to the word count. And some kids will put the contractions in thinking it will reduce the word count because, I said don't instead of do not. Guess what? Common App counts the don't as 2 words. So you didn't help yourself and you look unprofessional. Don't do it. Do not do it, right? There you go. Fix it. No contractions. I didn't put it on here, but part of that grammar and spelling, the word I is always capitalized in the English language. Do not write with a lowercase I unless you are writing about the trademarked company product iPhone. There are no lowercase i's as an individual thing in English. It is always a capital letter I. And in a college essay, it's okay to say I, whereas a lot of time we teach you not to use I in formal writing in school. In your college essay, it's great. It's fine because you're talking about yourself. So to say me or I is okay, but the I needs to be capitalized. Obviously, don't use any like texting acronyms, WYD, not that you'd use that in an essay, but LOL, none of that. You need to write actual words. Don't write you instead of YOU, okay? All right, numbers. Numbers should be written out, like right here, 10. It should be written, it should be written out as the number, TEN. And so they're actually called numerals. Write numerals under 10 out as the full word. I'm a history teacher, so I would actually say numbers up to 100. But those are two different styles of writing. However, the people reading it at the table, no matter what, are going to be familiar with this, writing it out under 10. You have to write the number out. So if it was when I was, 9, you're writing NINE. And in my opinion, if you're saying that it was when I was 14, you're going to write FOURTEEN, not the number 14. So write out your numbers as numerals, not as numerals, but as the whole word. And then eliminate and replace repetition. If you find yourself using the same word or the same phrase over and over again, this is the time where you go through and just find some other words, find another way to say it. That's that first edit. So you go through, you fix the grammar errors, you fix the contractions, you fix that you didn't capitalize things properly, you fix that you put the comma in the wrong place or the period in the wrong place, all those little things you fix, okay? You eliminate, you fix the numbers, you eliminate repetition. If you have the same word over and over again in a paragraph, get that thesaurus, okay? Go to dictionary.com, which I think has a thesaurus.com. I'm going to write it out because it's a funny word. Okay, so get a thesaurus and find another word for the same thing. They used to be on in actual books, for us old folks, but we can go on the internet and get them now at thesaurus.com, dictionary.com, and help to change some of those words. That's the first edit. Questions? Okay, the second edit is to go over the draft with someone who knows you well and ask them, have them read it out loud. Ask them if it feels and sounds like you. If when they read it, it feels unfamiliar, you got lost somewhere and you got to figure out how to write it about yourself. Okay. If they read it and they're like, yes, this is you. I see this. This is like, yes, I'm getting you, right? Then you did it. You did what you needed to do. Then go over it with someone who's not familiar with you or the story to check for understandability. So give it to somebody who doesn't know anything at all. And if they're reading it and going, what? That, wherever they did that, you got to work on that sentence because it doesn't make sense. There's something in there that doesn't make sense. Whatever it is, you got to find it and fix it. Okay. Pay attention to where they do that thing or where they switch words around. Have them read it out loud and listen. If they get confused, if they trip on their words, if the sentence is too long, or if the periods and the commas in the wrong place and they get mixed up, those are the places you need to work on because that's what somebody at the admissions table is going to read and be confused as well. Okay. Rewrite it, edit it, adjust it. Now this part, so the first slide I just did of the editing it, that doesn't take that long. That maybe takes an hour of going through the essay and finding all the mistakes and fixing them, grammar-wise, punctuation, capitalization, numbers, maybe even less, right? But this part can take a really long time. This part can take several times, and that's okay. So this rewrite, edit, adjust could be its own slide because it's its own thing. It takes a lot of time. That's where you work on really getting the essay to make sense. Sometimes I have people move entire paragraphs to different parts of the essay because it helps it flow better. And they didn't realize it until they put it over here or over there. Sometimes a sentence at the middle looks better, works better somewhere else. Make sure that you see that it's giving what you want it to give. It's conveying the information about you that you want, and that it flows and that it works for what you want and it makes sense. And if you need to move things around and if you need to cut stuff out, hey, that's what you need to do. Okay. Questions? Okay. Then another hard part is refining it. Then I go through word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. Are there too many sentences that are the same? They start the same way, subject, verb. They are all really long and have lots of clauses, or they're all really short, right? Or they sound like the kindergarten essay. I went to the store, then I got some ice cream, then it fell on the floor, then I cried, then I went home, then I. That's not sophisticated writing. That's not college level writing, right? So you remember at the beginning, I said they are also judging you on your writing ability. This is where that comes in. It also makes it more readable and more interesting to the person when you don't have those things, right? So you want to vary your sentence lengths and types. You want to vary your punctuation, and you want to go through and find stronger language, stronger images. If there is a theme, you want to connect them. And it is okay to move things around, cut things out, even though sometimes it hurts. You're like, no, I really like that. And yep, but you got to cut it down. It can take me an hour to cut out 5 words at the end when you have a really good essay, because it's so hard. And you have to think like, well, could I change this way so that now it's an ing word and I got rid of or it was I was going to, and now I'm going to say something else so I can get rid of the to and make it shorter. And then just keep checking it. Check it once, check it twice. And really, you're going to check it like 10 times. Okay. And then that's the reducing. Is there another way to say something? Is there something that you could take out? Is there anything that's repetitive? Is there anything that you kind of already said somewhere else in a different way? Pick the one that's better and take that out. Someone asked me what I mean by images. I'm going to give you guys an example in a second. But I think deeply about every word and every sentence choice. In my opinion, and a lot of people who are like in journalism and writing for that kind of like getting people to pay attention and novels, ask yourself if the things you're trying to keep that you don't want to let go of, are they doing work for you towards the goal, which is the college admissions, right? And college essay. And what work are they doing for you? If they are not doing work for you, they need to go. They are extra. You don't need it. So if they aren't conveying something you need to convey, if they aren't telling part of the story that you need to be told, if they aren't explaining something, adding imagery, adding voice, adding tone, then they can go. If you need to cut down words, if you need to cut down ideas, you need to make it flow better, they need to go. They are not helping you. Every single thing in your essay needs to do work for you, okay? Good essays take a lot of time, but the good thing is that you control this part of the application process completely, right? You can't control what SAT scores you get. You can't control the grades you got in the past or the grades you're going to get in the future. You can try, but the one thing you can control is how much time and effort you put into this essay, how much you rework it. And in the end, it really will be worth it, even though you'll be stressed and frustrated. It will be worth it in the end. My students always feel like it was. So now the examples of what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's some examples of a strong essay. And, I think sometimes kids think, oh, it has to be some crazy, horrible thing. And I happen to give an example of a kid whose mom had cancer just because that was the story. But it doesn't have to be some crazy, horrible thing. I had a kid one time was like, well, I don't have any tragic thing in my life. What am I going to write about? I said, you don't need anything tragic in your life. Write about you. Write about things that make you excited, that you're passionate about. They've heard every story in the book, good, bad, funny, otherwise. So don't worry about that. So this essay that I'm going to read to you is from a student who actually had 2 different essays. She was a debater. She loves debate. She wanted to write about debate, but people told her not to because they were like, oh, that's basic. Anybody could write about debate. There's a million people in the country that debate. Why would you write about that? And then she had this other essay that was about like social media because she doesn't like social media. And she's like, but people are probably going to think I'm crazy. So I looked at the 2 essays and I said, you know, I think we can work with this, right? Like, yes, the debate thing's kind of boring, but you do love it and you're passionate about it. And I see that in the essay. But also this other thing is really interesting and unique. And I really see you. I get to know you from this other essay more than from the debate one, because the debate one was more about the tournaments and the topics. So we worked together and we put both of them together. We cut from 2 different essays to make this essay and then reworked the essay once we got all the information together that matched. And I think it really showed who she was. So while I read it, I would love for you to like think about, what do you learn about her without being told? Like, what do you find out from the story she tells, but not her saying, I am this and I am that? What language or images does she use to make that happen? So if we were in class, I would actually have you answer this about each essay, like while we went through them in class. What do you walk away thinking about the student? What do you feel about the student? What do you think, who do you think she is? And did she have a theme or some kind of something that connected, a thread that ran through the essay, and how did she do that? And do you think this essay is going to help her application to a college? Why or why not? Okay, so if you can think about those questions. So this is her essay. You smile towards a group of people on the cold train platform only to be met with the crowns of their heads bent downward. Consumed by the things on their phones, people dismiss your greeting and the conversation that could have been drifts into the wind as they continue to scroll. Quickly shuffling past these people is the expected procedure. Follow through. Stop wanting them to look up. Connecting with you is the most dangerous thing they could do because in that moment, they would realize how the term social media itself is an oxymoron. Instead, you stand alone on the platform, gazing at the frozen statues of formerly authentic humans who are now holding all the connection and collaboration they will ever need in small rectangles of bright light. For real change, we should look up once in a while. All my life, I've been a conversationalist. Each day, I try to get to know my peers better or engage with someone new. This natural predilection towards making a connection with people is in my blood. In my Dominican culture, not talking to others is considered a criminal offense, and I make it a point to keep a clean record at all times. I grew up surrounded by talkative women who could make anyone feel comfortable and confident. From a young age, my eyes would widen in amazement listening to the charming, ebullient conversation of my aunts around the dinner table. Their warmth drew me in and made me want to skip the food and just talk all night. Most nights, that is exactly what ended up happening. My eagerness to talk, though, somehow does not suit the social media era I was born into. The reality is, I do not even have a Facebook page. Rejecting the World Wide Web and its various social media platforms was not something I aimed to do as a type of micro-revolution. It just happened. Despite my non-existent status updates, I have still been able to evolve socially while convincing others to join the movement for real, non-superficial connections. Through my now strange form of traditional communication, I have been able to find my strongest passions and closest friends. When I was a freshman, I joined my school's debate team. I was immediately greeted by other charismatic and outspoken students. Suddenly, I was surrounded by lively conversations that were about everything from important issues like gentrification to trivial ones, exchanges that made those around me laugh out loud in real life. In rounds, speeches were timed, strict, and full of analytical rhetoric. But in the lunchroom, students from different schools showed a genuine desire to know more about each other than what lay in their debate files. This positive atmosphere motivated me to stay involved in debate and search out other clubs that offered the same feeling. By taking my conversation skills and applying them to more than just my mother's dinner parties, I have learned how to effectively communicate with my peers and teachers to problem solve and build closer relationships. I have come to love our talks and have created lasting relationships with my peers and the underclassmen. Now, as a senior and president of the debate team in National Honor Society, I see more smiles in the halls and people connecting with one another. I cannot imagine the long and complex conversations I have with debaters being cut, cropped, and pasted somewhere onto a social media site. I feel connected to my peers in a way that is hard to mimic in a post. By taking the time to build these friendships and disregarding what others told me about my rather strange dislike of social media, my love for conversation has driven me to better understand my peers and be inquisitive about all aspects of society. Does that help you understand what I've been saying about images, language, sentence length, variation, a hook, and telling people who you are and your passions, right? Do you hear this and feel like you know this person a little bit better? I see people saying yes in the chat. Do you think that an admissions office will read this and say, whether they want this kind of person or not at their campus, will say, we definitely have an idea of what kind of person this is, and now we can make a decision if we want this person in our campus. And then hopefully they're going to say they want her. And they did. She got into a very good school. And actually, when I called that school several years later about another student, I said, oh, you have one of our students there, they're a whatever grade now. They said, oh, who? And I said the name. I've never had this happen except for with this essay. The person said, oh my God, I remember her essay. It was so interesting and different. So she's probably the one kid who found that different essay that no one else had written, but it really stood out. And there's nothing horrible or sad here. There's no trauma. There's no craziness, right? It's just an essay about her and how she thinks and what she likes to do. And I think she did a really great job. She's got these amazing images, right? Like you can see the train platform. You can see everybody on their phones. You can see the light reflecting into their faces and their heads down and all that stuff, right? So she really had to be observant. And that's what it tells an admissions office. This is an observant person, an analytical person. She's intelligent. She's capable of connecting with people. She's capable of analyzing the world around her. So it does a lot of work that's not just telling your story. It's telling a lot more. And that's what I mean by show, don't tell. This shows a lot about her without telling. There's stuff she doesn't tell us that we see from reading this essay, a whole lot of stuff. We see her values. We see what she cares about. She cares about connections with other people. She cares about her culture and her family. She cares about really getting to know people, really being invested in stuff, not just superficially, not just on social media for the likes, right? And she reminds us of stuff in her application. She reminds us, hey, yeah, I am the debate captain. I'm also the class president. I'm a pretty good student, right? I'm in the National Honor Society, but she doesn't brag. It's not like a big part of it. It's just like a little thing, a little touch that's thrown in there. And it's not her whole list. Her activities list is much longer. So she picked the 2 or 3 things that were important to her to kind of like put in there. It made sense because she's talking about debate, but she managed to get 2 very different ideas to come together and make a really beautiful essay. I was very proud of her at the end. But this took hours to get the 2 essays she'd already spent hours on mixed together because we started a whole new thing when we did that. And so that's what I mean by like caring and taking the time. She did care. She wanted to get into really good schools. She wanted to have a really good essay. And so she took the time, even though it was frustrating, even though she had to let go of 2 different essays, she took the time to make it the essay that it needed to be. And I think she just like, look at my non-existent status updates, right? So she pulls in little stuff about social media while not engaging with social media. She was something where she laughed out loud in real time, right? She put LOL in there, which it's a big thing that came out of social media, but she's saying in real life, not just as an emoji, not just for fake with people that don't hear the laugh, right? She's actually laughing. She tells us a little bit about her culture and her background, right? That she's Dominican, that she's close with her parents and her family, or the women in her family are strong women, and that's important. She's a conversationalist. So there's a bunch of stuff that this essay does that's like, I think really, really impressive. And this is sophisticated writing. They're also looking at this and saying, wow, this kid can handle reading and writing. This kid can handle classes, because look at what they did here, right? So that's what I mean when I say all those little points throughout the presentation. And here's another one of a student. It's a Muslim student. She uses her name in the essay, so it's okay. And she had this idea of a rebel, but she was like really bogged down in science originally. And we spent several hours on a Saturday and she had a tantrum and laid down on the floor and said, I don't want to do this anymore. But she got it done. One simple lesson in life that I've come to learn is that rebels are not born, they evolve. But what is uniquely different about this type of evolutionary process is that the carbon-based life form must at one point choose to continue evolving or revert back to its original pre-rebellious state. I first discovered that I was evolving my freshman year in high school while sitting in my room working on homework. I was interrupted by my distraught mother, who barged in to admonish me. Safia, why didn't you pray today? For a Muslim girl, that would be a seemingly easy question to answer. I just forgot. Time got away from me. I didn't make the proper washing in order to pray. Would have placated her. But that day I had no excuse. That day I just did not want to. For most of my early childhood, my mother shielded me from any anti-Muslim sentiments. When people would stare at us as we walked the streets of downtown Boston, she made sure that I did not notice people's unwelcoming faces. But then the time came to let me enter the world on my own. I was starting school. From the very beginning, I spent most of my time being ostracized by my peers. They taunted me about my hijab and speaking a different language, and I developed many insecurities about my culture and religion. Being isolated by my peers pushed me to focus on my academics, especially science, and by high school, I'd given up on making friends. The biggest turning point in my life was when I entered high school. When you come to know only isolation, it's very difficult to break free of the cycle, but I was placed in the most rigorous classes at New Mission and surrounded by peers who wanted to succeed just as much as I did. The most significant difference, though, was that these students looked at me as a person and did not judge me because of my religion or culture. Their acceptance of me prompted me to grow out of my shell and gave me the freedom to explore who I really was. This freedom let me analyze my religion and background instead of cling to it. Now, in my senior year of high school, I am an outspoken leader who is less concerned about living up to the standards of my parents' religion and more concerned about figuring out who I am. I am a debater and a coach, an advocate for students in the BPS, the president of the New Mission chapter of the National Honor Society, a leader at school, an outspoken woman, a caring friend, a good listener, and a loving daughter and sister. But more importantly, I am a teenager who is still questioning and learning about her world. High school taught me to accept my differences and grow with them. The moment my mother asked me why I did not pray, I realized I actually wasn't rebelling. I was just evolving. I stopped tying my identity to my religion because I have come to realize they are two different parts of a person. I chose to rebel against the system that forces many people to see those two parts as one. When I go to college, I want to continue to evolve as a person and push myself to do more things that I have not done before. At the end of the day, I am one person. There is no perfect way to describe me outside of the definition I ascribe to myself, right? And she actually had a title, Evolution of a Rebel, which I thought was really cool. So I let her keep it. But we had to find other words to take out because she was at the word limit, right? And she really was struggling with her religion and not really accepting. And it was also hard for her to come up with a positive thing at the end. So her ending's a little kind of odd or awkward, I think, still. But it's because she wasn't confident saying, I'm all for my religion now, right? She went in, she still had questions. She was still struggling with whether she wanted to be as strict with her religion as her family was, how she saw herself as a Muslim woman, how she saw her own religion, and that's okay, right? And so we had to have a lot of conversation about that for her to be comfortable enough to write something that wasn't negative at the end, because she really felt cynical and negative, but you just don't want to end that way. So she found something that she was okay with, which was I'm going to continue to evolve. Like, I don't know yet what I think, which is okay. And that shows that you're someone who's open-minded, someone who's always learning. That's a great quality that colleges want. And so it worked out, but I'll show you how it started. So you can see how it doesn't get that way overnight, right? So you'll see that some of the sentences are the same, but a lot of it has changed. This was her first draft. One simple lesson in life that I've become well acquainted with is rebels aren't born, they evolve. There's a point in the evolutionary process where rebels realize they're rebelling. Mine was while I was typing in my interdisciplinary vehicle in the 1918 flu pandemic. I was on a roll explaining the mechanisms of how the virus works when I was interrupted by my distraught mother barging into my room saying, Safia, why didn't you pray? For a good practicing Muslim girl, that would be a seemingly easy question. But for me, of all the statements in the world that could ever leave my lips, this one never crossed my mind. Wait, I should provide a brief explanation that led me to that conclusion. So that's grammatically incorrect, which is why I tripped on it. They've provided me with a home, food, clothes, and all the essential necessities to live and prosper, even went above and beyond and bought me TVs, games, and phones. They are wonderful parents, except theoretically, they never loved me, who I am now versus who I should have been. I grew up in a Muslim household. Do you see this is like really disjointed? They're just ideas. It's like free thought. And that's okay because it gets your ideas out, right? So she's just sort of rambling from one thing to another. And there's some really great sentences, which we kept, and some we tried to keep, but ran out of space. And I'll just scroll. The beginning was like half of a page. And then she kind of made this list of what makes me awesome, right? I work smarter, I'm open-minded, funny, charming, caring, witty, listener. And open-minded is like highlighted, right? Well, that's what comes out in her final essay, I think. And then she has a rough draft too. The title's somewhere in the middle of it. She goes on again, then the title's over here. So like, you can see how many times she did, and this was all before she got to me, with me helping her. So she really like did a lot of work, just so that you see it's not a one and done thing. It takes thought, it takes time, but that's okay. And then the other persons, you can see her two different, this is the Facebook one, rejecting social media, the stigma of, and then the debate stuff. And then she has a new start that she crosses it all out. And this also was several pages, and she kind of got the, what motivates me? What are your values? What are the things you want to focus on? So it's good to kind of have that list and that thing to help you focus of where you want to go. But just know that this is a seriously big undertaking. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's a long process. So both of these young ladies, you can see, have like 5 to 10 pages of editing before we did the final edit. So I hope that that like helps you. I have more examples, but I know I've been talking for a long time. So if you guys have any questions, please ask them. If you have some things you want to clarify, if this didn't help and you want to hear something different, let me know. Feel free to unmute yourselves. See if I can find the funny one. No, I don't think it's in here. So the funny, sarcastic one was a young lady who used to suck her thumb a lot, all day long. It was kind of gross. I can't believe I just did that. Yuck. And she wrote an essay about it. But she did an amazing job. Like, amazing. It was funny. It was not graphic, but very imagery. And it worked. And she used it in the end to show how she wasn't going to let some little like quirky thing about her hold her back. She wasn't going to let people judge her unfairly. She was going to let that she was a great student and a great person speak for her, not that she sometimes sucks her thumb. Now, she did kind of bend the truth a little bit because she limited it. She was smart. She knew not to say exactly how much she sucks her thumb. It was literally all day long. And in her essay, she made it like once in a while when I forget or I'm tired, I might put my thumb in my mouth. You know, I have this baby childlike quality, but I can overcome blah, blah, blah. And it was really good. And she even had like a little funny sentence in there where she said, you know, and I know that all you thumb suckers and former some thumb suckers out there will agree, right? And so that's like a way of talking directly to the people, because everybody, not anymore as adults, but everybody sucked their thumb when they were little kids. So she kind of poked fun at the like, you know, don't make fun of me because you all did it too. I know you did, right? It really worked. But when she said she was going to write an essay about sucking her thumb, we were all like, no, 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 you're not. No, you're not. No way. No way. That will be terrible. Please do not do that. But she really did a good job and it worked. And I said, okay, this you can use, right? But that's very risky and you have to do a good job at it. But it can work if you're a good writer and you got the right kind of tone and sense of humor. And you know, she didn't quite say how much she sucked her thumb. So that it worked out. And she got into a great school. I have to find that essay, Corey. I don't know where it is. It was from like 2 emails ago. So.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. You want to drop your email in the chat?
Sure. So remember that thing Corey said at the beginning about how I've been to 155 countries? That means that I am not available to answer things when I'm not in the country.
Where are you going this summer?
I don't know. I also do things at the last minute. I am a procrastinator, so do as I say, not as I do. I have a ticket to Dubai for the end of after school ends, but I don't have any other tickets besides that. So I will find my way back sometime in August, the United States, but I'm going to go to Oman for the first week with a friend and then most likely stay in in Central Asia and finish off what I call the stands, which is ironic because the ending of stand really just means country in those languages. So like Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. No, Turkmenistan has a 20-day quarantine. Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Azerbaijan, and then somewhere I'll pop over probably to the Maldives because my birthday's in the summer and I'm sure those countries are quite nice, but not the place I want to be for my birthday. So I'll go to the beach and come back. It's actually not that far away from those places, so it's not hard to get to. But all those countries, except for the Maldives, are new to me. So what I do, kids, is I leave for the summer because we have 2 months off. I know most people don't have that. And that's why I've been able to get to this many countries. I go someplace and then I just kind of continue around in the area and come home at the end. So I'll do a bunch of countries that are near each other or semi near each other and then come home. So I'll probably go to like 12 or so countries this summer. And then COVID makes it harder because you have to look up who's letting who in and how many tests you need and whether you have to quarantine or whether you can, some parts of the world still aren't open. So that also limits where I can choose from. So that's Central Asia is mostly open. And then I'll finish those areas off. Of the ones you can go to, certainly there's some places like Afghanistan that unfortunately are in the middle of turmoil and you can't really visit safely. So, you know, I kind of go around those ones, but yeah. So I probably won't be answering you from there, but if I can, I always have T-Mobile, guys. I should work for T-Mobile because T-Mobile works all over the world. It's free.